Hello, everybody. So hopefully everyone can see me and hear us. All right. So reading the text as we go.
Yeah. Are you still seeing breeding or has it calmed down?
Yes, yes, there is. It's calmed down a little bit, but it is still going on. And yeah, so all three species here are breeding, and the females are releasing eggs in the water, spawning as well. So yeah,
And remind us, you have Purpurius, you have Rugosus,
rugosis. Yeah, that's the common one, rugosis, and then we have the blueberry, and then the passion fruit or brown hermit crab. I forgot the
and
Latin name
that's
for that.
Brevi, I think. Is that the big one that we call
Yeah,
Brevimanus?
the big brown one. Yeah. So that one's the fairly common one here. But
Cool.
yeah, so those are the ones. Yeah. Okay. So the as far as like the breeding goes, most of them that I've seen, the most successful ones will as they enter the water, they'll wait as the tide is a little low on a calm night, and so that way, they're not rolling around everywhere, and it's really easy, successful release of the eggs. Where if it gets a little rough, then the female's rolling around everywhere, and it gets a little awkward, right, for them. It makes it more difficult for them to get out, but it's pretty fascinating to see. But I'll eventually post some footage up once I get to that. I've just been really busy with other stuff right now.
One thing I've wondered,
Hmm.
because I've never seen the mass spawnings in the
Yeah,
wild, but
yeah.
in other species that mass spawn,
Hmm.
predators will come to eat the spawn, like smaller predators,
Yeah.
the roe, the eggs. Do you
Hmm.
ever see like a lot of fish when
Yes,
the
yes, that's a great question, and I do have some footage of the little minnows, and they were around, and you could actually see them feeding on the eggs.
wow,
Yes, yeah, so it's
I
pretty
bet they
cool.
were loving it.
Yeah, yeah, they were, and so I got some footage, and they're smaller ones, but I'm sure some of the bigger fish will come in and feed on them because there's just so many of the eggs. They're
Yeah.
just literally like there's like in the little spot I was at, there was probably 20 to 30 hermit crabs that would be spawning at one specific time, and just nonstop. Hundreds of them go in the water and leave. So it was pretty fascinating to see all that stuff.
Yeah. I've also wondered, you're not, I mean, I know you do some underwater photography,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
hermit crabs tend to spawn at the full moon.
Hmm.
Corals tend to spawn at the full moon. I
Hmm.
wonder if hermit crabs zoe eat
Hmm.
the coral spawn. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody
Yeah.
knows, but
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's possible the corals that spawn, you generally they're a little bit bigger, but they could eat them. But I have seen like types of worms that feed on the coral, so like specific bristle worms will feed on it at night. But that's the only thing that I've observed, like going after the coral as it floats up to the surface,
yeah.
and it's actually beautiful because on specific nights, and especially here in Okinawa when we have heavy rains, really heavy rains, then the coral will spawn, and it'll come out, and then it'll float on the surface of the water, and then it washes the shore, and if there's massive amounts, it'll actually turn the shorelines pink. It's
Wow.
or like a peach color, so it's absolutely fascinating. And
Wow.
yeah, beautiful,
I
beautiful
wonder
stuff.
if the detritus from the rain, like from the rivers washing
Hmm.
in, is
Yeah.
a trigger somehow for the corals or
Well, I think it's the barometric pressure as well as
oh yeah.
lightning and thunder will trigger it, because I had sea anemones in my fish aquarium before, and during that same event, they actually triggered and spawned inside the aquariums during
Cool.
that. Yeah, but they weren't getting the runoff, they weren't getting the rain, but they were getting the pressure as well as
Right.
the
The
lightning and thunder,
cues.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it happens every
Sue
year. It
Brown.
happens.
Sue Brown has noticed that a lot in
Mhm.
Australia
Yeah.
with her spawns. Yeah, she said many are on stormy nights. So,
Yep.
wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Dr.
Yeah. It's pretty
Tudge
neat.
talked about that a little bit yesterday for
Oh,
our
nice.
in terms of our tanks and our crabs and storms and can they feel it? It was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that is. So much more to learn, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we're all tied in. Like Alicia said, yeah, more births happen on full moons. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. Everything's affected by the tide, right? And the
yeah.
pressure.
And we're what, 75% water, so we're
Yeah,
affected too.
For sure. But yeah, so what I've noticed too with the hermit crabs that I'm giving shells, like when I find hermit crabs are adapting with like a shell that's old, so I find a lot of hermit crabs adapting with these old shells that are probably 50 years old that
Fossils.
have been,
Yeah.
yeah, that are fossils, have been passed down to probably hundreds of hermit crabs, right? And so when
Wow.
I offer them other shells that all the kind people are sending me from around the world, the ones that they really like, what do they call? I forgot the name of this one. What this
Oh
one is
yeah.
the
Uh,
magpie. I think they call it a
yeah,
magpie shell or
magpie.
something like that. They love these, right? And then
Wow.
they also love the turbans here, the specific type of turban. And
Wow.
then they like the little green ones. They like the different colors because remember they're hanging out in the coastal forest. So I think a lot of them will prefer like a greenish blue shell because they're crawling up in the trees that
Yeah.
resemble the environment that they live in. And of course, the
Camouflage.
tapestry turban, they always love these, right? So, but yeah, so I always fascinated that because people always ask me, do hermit crabs see color? Well, they do have a preference, and they will pick specific colors as well as based on the type of opening, if it's circle or oval, and they smell right. They based on size. So sometimes they'll start getting and feeling one, and then they'll say, no, this is too big. Let me go to the next one. And I had one today that actually did that. I posted it on my Instagram account, so it's pretty neat.
That's super cool.
Yeah, the Pika, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Stacy's
Yeah.
mentioned it's called the
We
Pika.
have our hermit crabs often come in those if they're in an
Okay.
outer shell, but they
Yeah.
don't choose them. So everyone who's watching, send
Yeah.
Shawn your magpies because my
Yeah.
crabs, once they change out of
Yeah.
them, nobody else ever wears them.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
true.
that's a great use for those.
But you're right, exactly. Allison mentions perhaps pattern as well. Yes, and what I've noticed this week and last week as well is all the hermit crabs that I found that were adapting with plastic, they were all males. Okay, so maybe the males are sacrificing a shell so the female has it for eggs, or maybe they're utilizing this because it is during mating season, so they are finding mates, which allows them to be much more quick, right? They can move
Right,
fast, and this is
right.
all happening during the night, so there's no predators other than humans. And but it's also maybe it attracts the female. Who knows, right? Maybe it's something different. We don't know yet, but hopefully this month the team of scientists are coming out and we're going to study this, right? Some more on this line of the effects of plastic on the hermit crabs. So it
I
should
would
be
add
interesting.
too,
Yep.
since the male has to come like three-quarters of the way out of his
Yeah.
shell to
Mhm.
transfer the sperm, maybe
Yeah.
that's even easier.
It's
Yeah.
easier. It's going to be much easier for him to do that, and yeah, and even the other night I saw them actually a male was guarding the female and then another male would continue just to go around him and he would just punch him off, right? So it was pretty fascinating. But other areas that I go to, there's so many males and females that they don't fight over them at all, right? But this
Yeah.
other specific beach, they were fighting over the females because they were limited, I guess, on them more males. Yeah, so it's
Something we
pretty.
don't know either is if the hermit crab returns to the beach where it was spawned.
Yeah,
Maybe that
yeah,
happens. It happens with turtles, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. That's a great. You're exactly right because some of them they will venture, miles out, depending, especially the land hermit crab. It'll go up in the mountains and then come back down, crossing the roads, crossing the streets, and it's uh, it's pretty crazy. You're right. You'd have to track it, but then the hard part is they change shells, so you'd have to actually track the crab somehow, right?
Right. And shed their exoskeletons and like
Yeah.
what? Like I don't even know how you would do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it would be very, very difficult. But yeah, let's see,
Sorry, we're
yeah,
ignoring the comments.
yeah. So one of the somebody asked about is it TO? There are a lot of turban shells in Okinawa, and so some of my friends will reach out to the restaurants and get shells from them, and which that does happen sometimes. Specifically turbans, they call it the Sazai turban. It's a really durable turban, sort of resembles this one, but a little bit bigger. And but lately there hasn't been too many of them, and they've been importing the big ones from Japan that have the spikes on them. You know what I'm talking about? The
Oh
really
yeah,
lightweight
yeah.
turban with the spikes. So they've been
Yeah.
importing those, but the problem, those are so big for a lot of the hermit crabs here. You don't find too many large hermit crabs that'll go into that specific large adult. Yeah, like that
Tornadoes.
size. Yeah, that size I would be okay with, but anything bigger than that, it could be difficult because we don't have too many of the Indonesian hermit crabs here, and usually those are the biggest ones that I've seen so far.
Yeah. Kim Suhan cleaned these up. Normally they're very covered with, whatever, all sorts
Yeah,
of stuff, barnacles and everything. But he cleaned them up as a wonderful present. Sent me some.
yeah, those are nice.
Super lightweight too for how big they are.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're durable. They're really durable, but they seem like they're so fragile. But yeah, somebody was asking, do I need small shells? Yes, I definitely need, anything from this size and up, to this. Um, and what I've noticed too is during the season of the breeding season, is a lot of the hermit crabs, I find that before they start entering the water in the daytime, they'll hide up in the trees and they're just, they're communicating, they're interacting, and eventually they'll fall down and land on rocks or limestone, which will crack the shells. And so sometimes I have found hermit crabs naked that are just walking around, and I think a lot of it's due to competition as well as, or they broke their shells from falling down. And a bit, a common shell we have here in Okinawa, it was an invasive species, is the African land snail, that monstrous snail. But those, of course, are durable, but eventually they will break. They'll break. But there's millions of those land snails, which has probably increased the population of hermit crabs because they brought that over here along with the apple snail. So those are two invasive
Interesting.
species in Okinawa that have actually probably increased the population of the hermit crabs. And I have footage of hermit crabs actually feeding on dead apple snails, and eventually they're going to use those, right? So it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, but any shells, we're always in need of shells, and a lot of times people will send shells from like Florida and conch shells like this. These I can't use for the land snails, but these we will, with kid programs, we will toss these into the ocean because the marine hermit crabs can actually use these. But I'm
Nice.
not in need of these for my specific project, right?
Yeah, that's a good
So,
distinction.
yeah.
Always good to return them to the ocean, though, even if they
Yes.
just make more sand, break up and make more sand.
Yeah. And so sometimes people will often ask me like, why are you, like, so when I do trade out the shells, I'll often leave, if the shell is usable, I will often leave it on the beach, even if it's old, or this is just an example I showed during education seminars, but I will put it back on the beach because it is better than plastic, right, at the moment, right? But I will also put empty shells in the coastal forest as well myself. But I actually enjoy doing it more with programs, with kid programs. And next Thursday, I have a program of 5 kids where we're going to actually make the Switch for Nature shells along with a lot of the donated ones. We're going to put those in the coastal forest for the hermit crabs and educate the kids. And they love doing that stuff.
Nice. What kind of kids is it? I know you did some Girl Scout stuff.
Yeah, Girl Scouts, Boy
Schools.
Scouts, you name it. The next one I'm doing is with a summer camp with the sea turtle organization called Churamura. And so they do a lot of cool stuff with the kids, get them out diving, teach them about turtles, conservation. And then I'm going to go in and give a presentation, and then we'll go down to the beach. And I have a shell that I will carve their name on it and make the Switch for Nature. And I'll carve their name on it, and then I give it to them during the presentation, and then they go put it on the beach.
That's so cool.
The hard part is they don't want to give it up and put it on the beach.
Yeah.
They want to keep it like last time, 2 weeks ago, one of the teenagers, she was like, I can't get rid of this thing. I
Got my
gotta
name
keep
on
it, like, and a lot of times too during these presentations, and I could relate to this because I've been a shell collector for a long time, and but people, like when they see these beautiful shells, it's a treasure, and they just want to hold it, and they know like the project is like, hey, we're going to give this back to nature, and they're with their parents as well, the kids, and they're just holding the shell, and they're like, Mom, I really want to keep it, and they start crying, right? And I'm like, okay, Johnny, you can keep this one, but you got to promise me when you're ready, you bring it back to the beach for me, and you put it on the beach, okay? So, because at the same
I
time,
love that.
I mean, yeah, there's very little, like most of them, they're good at getting up, but every once in a while, they have a kid that's just, he's in love with this, he's fascinated by this, And it's like, I'm not going to ruin his day over this. Like, hey,
Mm-mm.
bring it back on another day when you're ready. No problem. Can you do that
That
for me?
also
Yes.
keeps it in his mind,
Yeah,
when do
yeah.
I get to do that? And,
Yeah, so
that's brilliant. That's
it's a
smart.
good thing, yeah, because you don't want to be a party pooper and like just make poor
Give me
kid,
that shell.
yeah, give me that show, boy, right? Yeah, to just take it away, but yeah, so but it's fun. It's really, but it's opened the eyes to many people about collecting, right? Because most people they don't realize that they're
Yeah,
taking this. So I've made flyers as well, and I've been putting those out as well, and getting in touch with environmental agencies that work on the military installations, informing them about hermit crab conservation, and
that's
about
awesome.
during the mating season, so people aren't running them over because roadkill is a huge problem here. A lot of the people they just drive and they focus on this, but they're not looking down at wildlife. So roadkill is a huge problem here. And
Oh, I bet.
this year I've seen literally 200 plus that were crushed in the road. So
Mm, that's
yeah,
so
it's pretty
bad.
sad.
I'm glad you're doing that. We're all sort of, I don't even think we talked about it
Hmm.
specifically, but Angela Sayre is doing a thing about shells. Take the Leave the shell, take the
Take
memory.
the memory. Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one. Yes.
yeah, we've been doing
Yeah.
on Lycos. We did a whole push for spring breakers for people to take shells back. So I think
Yeah.
our concerted efforts, we should do this every year. We should pick a theme
Yeah.
and all put our efforts in the same,
Hmm.
theme or something. It's great. I think
Yeah.
it's
Because
making a lot of difference.
there's a thing you got to also remember that shell collecting is a great hobby. It's a great relief, a stress relief for a lot of people, and it's their therapy, right? Walking on the beach, they get
Yeah,
out, it gets them off their mind, it makes them feel great, just like bird watching or anything else, right? Or aquariums, and just anything, right? So it gives them joy, and so you don't necessarily want to take away that joy. And if it's legal, right, and they could legally take shells, yes, people are going to continue to do it, even though you recommend that they're hermit crab homes, and the same thing here. But what I recommend is like, hey, if you're going to take it, be selective and take limited amount and return all the unwanted. So if you get a better specimen, bring the other one
that's
back
true.
that you don't want, right?
Yeah,
And give it back. You don't have to overtake and have 1,000 of these things. So
right,
give your shells back to nature, because something
right.
else could value. And all these shells, and even when I'm scuba diving, I'll find if a hermit crab's not living in here, maybe a small goby fish would be living in here,
Sure.
right? So
Octopus
there's,
hiding
yeah,
or yeah.
exactly. There's so many different animals that depend on these as a home, right? So it's pretty important.
Yeah. Another unmentioned fact is
Hmm.
shells are calcium carbonate and the ocean
Yeah,
is acidifying. And when
yeah,
we take away the calcium from the ocean, we're just contributing to the acidification. But putting shells
yeah,
back allows that calcium
yeah,
to sort of go back into this giant, huge megacosm, whatever you call it,
yeah.
that still needs, a balance.
Yeah, and they also, break apart and form reefs, and things can grow on them, pieces of coral, algae grow on them. So they're
Yeah,
pretty important. Even like when they break apart, like even birds will use them around their nest to camouflage the eggs. So,
that's cool.
it's crazy, specifically bivalves, but you will find other shells that are broken that they will use and just blend right in very good. So
That's
people can't
cool.
see them or predators can't see them.
That's cool.
Yeah, and
Um,
also with the because you mentioned taking photos instead. My thing is take trash, not homes. That's mine. So the
right, pick
goal
that
is
trash up.
yeah, and the goal is is trying to inspire people. You can't tell them you must do this, you do this, da da da. It doesn't work that way. But you have to inspire people through our actions, right?
Yeah,
And if you're doing it, it inspires people. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it, right? And educate the children. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. All right, I'm gonna pop off. You're doing great.
Okay. Thank you so
People are sick of
much.
my face. I'm
Oh,
all
we're
over the
not sick
place.
of your
So,
face, but it was good seeing you
yeah,
and good chatting with you.
you
Thank you so
too.
much.
Thanks you for doing
Okay.
this.
Thanks, Mary. Okay. Thank you. Okay. We're here. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and type in there, please. Yeah. So do I have any favorite hermit crab memories? Now, one of the coolest memories was one time my friend Dave Orr found a hermit crab living in a tube, and it was living in this tube right here. And he brought it from another island, and he just stopped by my house randomly. He's like, "Hey, Shawn, I found this hermit crab living in a tube." So he left it. He brought it to me, and it was at nighttime in a bag. And so we left it in the bag, but at nighttime, it got out of the bag and crawled up the side of my shoe box. So at the front of Japanese homes, there's a shoe box that you put all your shoes in with a wire, with the phone wire. And it crawled up there, and it was the only place that I have like a seashell, like it's called the Venus comb murex. And it was just sitting up there, and he actually crawled into it, left this on top of the shoebox, and then he was actually on the bottom on the floor. So when I actually came over to go to work, I almost stepped on him. And I thought it was fascinating that the only shell that I had available for it to actually get into, he found it. So then that's when I knew that they could actually smell shells. And so I was pretty fascinated with that. I thought that was pretty amazing. So I don't bring the hermit crabs home, but that specific time, uh, my friend brought one to me randomly, and but it worked out. We eventually brought him back to the beach, so that was pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, so how many shells do I think I've received since the starting of the project? That's a great question. I wish I would have recorded everyone, but it's got to be at least like it's in the thousands, 2000 plus easily, So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And lots of help, lots of kind people, and it's been very, very good. Are hermit crabs all over the island or in just certain areas? Good question. Yes, so they are all over the island. Um, Specific areas they've been poached, where if there's like homeless people living in a specific area, I've noticed that they will eventually wipe them out, use them for fishing bait, or possibly eat them, but they will definitely wipe out specific populations of them. Or if they do like land reclamation and they extend the beaches and they put in like a wall or definite roads and stuff like that, they'll wipe out the specific hermit crab populations. But other than that, if there's a coastal forest, you will find them everywhere. And there's literally millions of them, right? But this year has been a really big problem with poaching, and we're working on bringing awareness to that. But it seems like a lot of people are using them for fishing bait, as well as taking them and getting them over to China and selling them in auctions. And it's specifically the blueberry hermit crab that goes for big money, adult blueberry hermit crabs. Yeah. So thank you for all the people that are giving the shells or bringing them back to nature. Yeah. So how often do I find crabs that have taken my shells? So with the Make the Switch for Nature shells, these ones, since they're marked, this week, actually, I found at least 8 of them. So, but I go to the same beaches. I go at night. I know how to find them. And yeah, so they're still there. And these are shells that I put out for 4 years ago, some of them. And they're still fine, no problems with the slight carving that I put on there. There's no damage to the shell yet. So I know that even with this slight carving on top of the shell surface, that these are going to last 10 plus years. And the reason why I carve them is because I don't have to use any chemicals, and it will not wash off as well. In the beginning, with specific shells, I would have to grind them down to a flat surface with this shell, and then I would carve it, but then I would have to put, since it was transparent almost, right, or the mother of pearl look, I had to use a marker. And the problem with the marker is I would try to get markers that were non-toxic, but eventually everything becomes toxic, right? And I didn't want to promote actually painting shells because we don't want to promote that, right? Uh, so that's why I went with this one. And this is the only one now that I actually carve because there's no toxins. It's all just carved in there. So this actually works out the best. And how many species of hermit crabs are here in Okinawa? We actually have 6, and that's one including the coconut crab. And but the main ones that you're going to see are the blueberry hermit crab, the rugosa, the tawny hermit crab, and then I call it the passion fruit or the brown hermit crab. Those are the three that I mainly assist and give shells for the most part. Yeah. Yeah, and the question was, I bet the carving discourages people from picking them up. Yeah, and that's the whole goal is where, because the fishermen they're going to take these, and sometimes they'll just use a hammer and smash them to get to the shell and use the abdomen and put on a fishing hook and use for bait. It's part of their culture. But hopefully, over time, a fisherman would see this and be like, "Oh, what is this? Maybe I shouldn't crack it." Or they're going to research what is MTS4N, and as long as they type that in, do an internet search, Google search, something's going to pop up, either one of my accounts, and then they're going to see that it's a conservation effect, right? So hopefully that's the goal. Hopefully people will not take these, right? Um, I hope not. I hope definitely. I'm sure some people will, right, at some point, but eventually, they're going to regret it because they're going to realize what the purpose is, right? And but either way, my thing is you can't if people are going to take them, they're going to take them. But there's nothing I can do about that, right? Yeah, it's pretty exciting watching these hermit crabs. Now a lot of times I've been doing it so much that I can recognize which hermit crab in an actual cluster of area, like if they're feeding, you can generally see, like if he's in a specific shell that's way too small for him, I could generally tell what if he's ready to move into a bigger shell and what an average of a shell that he would want or use based on the size. I'm not always right, but I'm getting much better at it by with experience of doing it right. The engraving reduces the appeal for the shell collectors. Yeah, Sue, that's a great question. But I think with some people, they might find it as a collector's item, and they might think that the shell might be worth art or money someday as well. So I'm trying not to make them look too nice. You know what I mean? I'm trying now lately, I'm on 890. So I've carved 890 of these shells in the last, 4 years or so. But I'm trying to do it so they don't look too nice, right? So before I would try to make everything too perfect, but now it's like I'm just going to put a number on them, and that way it's more obvious, right? So. Yeah, how long have I lived in Okinawa? I've been here for over 30 years. And I started working with the hermit crabs. I started in conservation photography in 2012. And then I started the hermit crab project in 2014 called Crabs and Beach Trash Homes. But the first one I found was in 2010. And then 2014, when I started the project, I was just obsessed with finding, photographing as many, only because I was interested in learning why these animals were adapting with all the plastic, and that was really what fascinated me. And this is all if you can see here, this is all the plastic right here. This is 166 pieces, I think, something like that. So yeah, I had more, but I didn't start counting them, and I threw them away. But right now I had to restart over, and I think I got 160. This is the most recent one, is 166. And this is one of the most common pieces of plastic that the hermit crabs adapt with. This is actually from a cassette gas tank from beach barbecues. And this is a common one that will be on the beach and eventually wash in the water or wash into rivers and land and come into the ocean. So this is a really common one that you're going to find, one of the most common ones. And let me see what else I have here. And the second most common one is I'm going to find is this. And this is for the smaller one. Usually the tawny hermit crabs are going to be living in this. And this is from the bottom. Think of a peg that goes into the bottom of the four legs of a chair. So it prevents it from sliding across the floor and creating noise. So these are on all the public school systems. They have these little plugs underneath the chairs, and somehow from other countries in Asia, they wash up on the shore, and the hermit crabs love using these things. And a lot of the plastics have specific oils in them. I think it's called oleic acid or oleamide, something like that. But it smells very similar to food, right? To potential fish eggs or another hermit crab. So as hermit crabs die, so a lot of times what will happen is Okinawa, is a hermit crab will get crushed over, get crushed in the road, and it creates a smell, a really attractive smell that brings in other hermit crabs, and they start feeding on it. Maybe it's a sense that there's another shell available as well as there's food. And so the hermit crabs will feed, but then they're in that traffic lane and they get run over as well. So it's a trap. And then the other problem is when you have the plastic bottles, right? And here's an example. So if this plastic bottle washes ashore at an angle and it's sitting on a rock, and a hermit crab falls in here, and now it cannot crawl out. It dies in there. A little bit of rainwater goes in. It eventually it could drown, right, after a day or so, and then from there, it creates that smell, that attractive smell. Then more hermit crabs will crawl down the rock and go inside. They get trapped in. They get trapped in. And I found, some cases of pet bottles that had 20, 30 crabs in them that were dead. So it's a big problem over here is these things create traps. Yeah. Yeah, so if you find any shells would be the whole goal of the project is if you're going to donate shells, what I recommend is try not to take any shells from the wild anymore. Okay, so try to get any shells that are from donations from old collections in the basement, people that have had hermit crabs that have passed away, or you have a collection of them you're not using anymore. So that's where I want all the shells to come from. I don't want the people to, even though in that area there may be a lot of them, but we want to try to keep them naturally in the wild. Okay. Have I had to manually the cut any out of plastic trash? No, I've never had to. They don't prefer to be in the plastic, so they always will come out. I had one hermit crab that had a shell that it was attached to that was so small that it couldn't get it off, but I didn't interfere because I didn't want to pull it off and damage the abdomen, and I could have caused more damage than good, and it could have died. So I just left it alone, put some shells in the forest, and hopefully, as the abdomen would shrink over time, it'll be able to get that micro shell off of its abdomen. Yeah, so what type of natural foods do the hermit crabs eat? So their favorite food is called a screw pine. It looks like a pineapple in the coastal forest. That's actually their favorite, and they help out with dispersing the seeds as well. But they will literally eat anything. But a lot of times they eat roots that wash ashore. So they are like the cleaners of the beach cleaners. They will eat anything. I've seen them eat literally anything. There's nothing that they won't eat. Yeah. Yeah, are there specific sizes that I need more than others? Yes, so specific shell sizes. So anywhere from these three right here, this is generally the common size that I use. Okay, so anything from like a nickel up, so that's generally the size. And sometimes you'll get some bigger ones. So yeah, anything is great. Yeah, so the question was the abdomen shrinks. I have seen this when I find hermit crabs that don't have a shell that are walking around naked for a long period of time, their abdomen will shrivel up and get dry. And I don't know if it's a natural mechanism that just happens, but you got to remember most hermit crabs will utilize a shell without a hole in it, and then they will transfer water in there either through drinking it, or they will go in the ocean or into a puddle, and they will put water in there which will keep moisture inside of the shell, which will allow that abdomen to swell up and actually get that moisture in there. Yeah, basically dehydration. Yeah, Stacy, I think that's what it is. Yeah, pandanus. Yep, screw pines. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, we have those, and that's definitely their favorite food. They love it, and literally, you'll see hundreds on them when they drop down. When they're ripe, they'll drop down right into the sand. Then all the hermit crabs will go feed on them. And so Does that mean that they are dying? Yes. So eventually they would die if they dried up. Um, so yes, they need to find a shell. But I saw this fascinating video. I sent it to Mary, but on NHK Japanese television recently, they had this footage, and it was just a computer generated video of a hermit crab inside of a glass shell. The hermit crab would go up and it would feed on water through using its feelers, I can't even think of the names, claws, and then eventually it basically absorbs it and brings it in, and then it actually excretes it underneath of its body into the shell. And I just thought that was fascinating because I didn't know that they actually did that. While they're drinking the water, they're actually putting water, they're filling up their shells with water. And so I thought that was pretty amazing because I always assumed that they always had to go to the ocean to collect water. But there's also hermit crabs that live in the mountains and they don't ever go to the ocean, and they might just have to depend on drinking rainwater. Yes. Sue, have you ever tried collecting the seeds and then freezing them and then reusing them for your hermit crabs? Yeah. And then Christine asked, "Do you have other wild animals you're passionate about?" Yes. So I go through my stages and I get immersed in whatever I'm doing, right? So I'll do underwater or I'll do like, birds, whatever it may be. But yes, I focused a lot of energy in 2000, 14 through 20 through 19 on endangered species, protected species of the Ryukyu Islands. And you could see and check out my website, OkinawaNaturePhotography.com, and you'll see a lot of the images that I took were featured in National Geographic and used for a lot of conservation efforts. And so I spent a lot of time bringing awareness to those species in Okinawa. But now I just completely, which has been crazy, like the last year and a half, been only focused like crazy about these hermit crabs. But that, I mean, if you're going to do something, you have to go full force into it. And there's so much more to learn. Yeah. So does anybody have any other questions? I think what is this chat good till 11:30? I think so, right? Yeah, as far as like the work that I've done with the Girl Scouts, a lot of times people will just contact me and hey, we want to do this, we want to do a presentation, and we go out on the beach with them. And usually it's always the mother. A lot of times I have to approach people, so I'll see the Girl Scouts selling Girl Scout cookies on base at like the local grocery store called the PX, and I'll go up and say, "Hey, what's going on here? My name is Shawn Miller, and here's my business card. Here's what I do. If you want to set up anything, I got these shells, and then we go do it." So a lot of it's just networking, and yeah. So I'm always down for anything really. It's like any event, even if adults, whoever it is, let's go put some stuff on the beach. And yeah, so yeah, Stacy was asking about Kelly Clarkson, and that was pretty cool. Because initially they contacted me, their staff, and they were like, "Hey, we've been seeing interesting things on Facebook or on Instagram. Would you be interested to go on the Kelly Clarkson show?" And I was like, "Yeah, is this a joke, right? Or are you being serious?" And then they're like, "Yeah, just make a quick video." So I'd made like a 2-minute video of me on the beach, like walking, like, "Hey, I'm Shawn Miller. Here's what I do," and then just brief, right? And then of course I sent it to him, and I didn't hear anything back. So I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'm not going on. I guess they didn't like what I did." So, but then eventually, like 4 days before the show, they're like, "Hey, you still want to go on?" I'm like, "Yeah." And the thing was, it was on, like I had to be live here in Okinawa like at 1:30 in the morning, and it was on Skype. But the good thing was, the team was really good. They were really professional. They were quick, and they were just basically like, "Hey, you got 2 minutes. That's it." Right? So I had to get to the point, jump to the point, let them know what I do. And so it was really cool. It's a great opportunity. And but yeah, pretty exciting. More people were letting me know that they saw it, so it was pretty cool that they were pretty excited that I was on Kelly Clarkson. Yeah, and I didn't as far as Stacy, as far as a grant, I didn't get a grant. During that Kelly Clarkson show, they gave me $1,000 donation. But the team, like this summer, I'm going to be working with scientists next month, some scientist friends, and that I knew years ago, and now that they're doing a lot of different things in marine science and research and deep water stuff. But they always wanted to work with me on this hermit crab project and study and learn about the effects of plastic pollution, why these hermit crabs are adapting with plastic. So they're actually coming out, and they got a small grant, and which is great. And they're going to be coming out working, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of data we come up with. But either way, it's going to be fun, and I'm sure we're going to figure out some things. If the plastic is affecting them, if it's a problem with them, if they're ingesting it. If it's specifically the males that are using the plastic more than the females. Who knows? There's many uh, you know. Yeah, that's a great question with Stacy. More people are seeing the importance of hermit crabs, but I talked to Mary about this as well. And another issue is just like when you see now with the octopus. The octopus is becoming really popular, but what I see is I see a lot of people going out and they're handling the marine life and the animals more. So when you bring more attention to it, more people want it. More people want to buy it. More people want to take it. More people want to, So this is a big problem here, even in Okinawa. Like kids, they want to go to the beach and collect hermit crabs, bring them home, and of course the parents are like, "Yeah, let's just take them home. We know they're protected, but we'll still just take them home. We'll bring them back later, and eventually they might die or not." But we're also, the more that's the problem with conservation. The more pictures, the more work that I do, I'm bringing more awareness to it. And then potentially people want to sort of simulate what I want to do, or attracts them more to it. So there's that balance, right, that we're learning. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, and it's best to take photos, not animals, right? Yeah, and I see that big time. Once you mentioned Snake Road, and a lot of people that love, you know, what they call them, they call it herping or herpetologists. They go out and they photograph snakes, lizards, and stuff like that. But they just love picking them up. They want to collect the snake. They want to pick it up. They want to hold it. They want to look at it. The problem with that is eventually you are harming it because you're holding on to it, squeezing it. And I've been out there with people. I don't pick up snakes. I did when I was younger, but I just take photos of them, right? But it's sort of almost like a form of harassment because you are harassing them, right? And eventually they could get injured. But yeah, it's a big thing that's pretty common right now. And even with ecotourism, right? When you have so many people going out and they are educating people on things, but if they're catching the fish, if they're picking up the wildlife, if they're touching all over it, we don't know the long-term effect of that. So it is good to bring education in nature, but we don't want to be, handling things and destroying it or killing it. So that's always a problem. Yeah, people are always going to do that. Yeah, and it's hard even here. Like people don't monitor anything. There's no like in the States. What do you guys have? You have the what is it? Fishing game, right? And things like that. And you actually have people that enforce laws. But here, there's really nobody. And the big thing, like we've informed people about the hermit crab poaching situation, and the Coast Guard. We've informed the police station, and but the big thing is you have to catch them in the act. So you can't apprehend them, but you have to call the cops, and then the cops have to come over, and then they could just dump the hermit crabs and then say, "Oh no, I don't got any," right? So, and most of the people that are taking them are fishermen, and so they're not going to get in trouble for taking them, even though they're a protected species over here. So it's a big problem. So one of the things we want to work on is just education, more putting up signs when you come in the airport, putting up signs at beaches, and just letting people know that leave the crabs alone. You don't have to take them home. Yeah, it's a huge problem over here. Hello, Tricia. Yeah, a lot of popular faces popping up. That's good. And once again, thank you for all the donations, everybody. They are definitely making a difference because on a lot of the beaches that I put, hundreds of shells on, I won't find any hermit crabs with plastic anymore. So they are truly making a difference. And there's beaches where I don't put shells on, and definitely I will find hermit crabs adapting with plastic. But if you didn't hear the beginning of it, this is the mating season right now, and which is the first year that I actually spent multiple days going out, and I actually timed it, and actually see this going on. Hundreds of hermit crabs mating, hundreds of hermit crabs spawning in the water. Seeing the hermit crabs laying their eggs and actual small fish feeding on them and stuff like that. So it's been pretty cool, and actually seeing the process and learning about the process and how it works. It's pretty fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, so Bonnie asked about, is it okay to buy shells from Amazon and ship them over? And that's another thing. Yeah, so if that's an area where you can't, yeah, it's best to get these shells from somebody that already has them or has taken them. For example, somebody has a shell collection. It's in the basement. Grandpa's shell collection. It's just sitting there, stuff like that. Or hermit crab users, it's best to get them from that. But you got to think though too, like if we do continue to buy more and more, but we all have to get them somewhere, right? But if we do, they're going to take more from specific areas as well. But that, I just make sure they're coming from like a legit source if you're going to get them that way, right? And they're not overtaking things. But the good thing is for the project, I've been getting a lot of shell collections from old shells from old collections, which is nice. Yeah, and over here, the good news is recently it's becoming like really trendy and cool to clean beaches. Where before in the past it wasn't, but now like younger generation, older generation, every weekend there's beach cleanups, and it's great, right? They're posting on social media. Everyone has social media now, so that's wonderful. But it's still not enough. Like there's so much trash that comes from China, Japan, Korea, and washes ashore. So you could clean a beach, and then 2 days later, based on the wind direction and the currents, you'll have like it'll just be littered again. So the good news is there's just so much. But something interesting that happened on so you could see this. This is a marker cap, and we were doing a beach cleanup down here at Uza Beach, which is close to here, about 15 minutes away. And we cleaned up the beach. We got about 5 trash bags, and then one of the ladies is an artist, so she collects all the plastic. So she was taking the plastic out of the bags to keep certain pieces to make art out of, right? And when somebody took out this marker cap, there was an actual hermit crab in. So somebody threw the hermit crab in the trash and didn't realize that there was a crab inside of it. So luckily I was there, and we had the bucket and we had multiple shells. We put it in there and eventually it switched. So this was actually number 153. And so that was like something that was an eye opener, right? Because you don't realize that doing beach cleanups, you might be throwing wildlife in the trash, right? Yeah. So shell stickers on them. So they're always going to, maybe they have an area, the snails always make the shells, right? And then a lot of times, like they might be from Indonesia or a specific China, and they might polish them, right? So they say they were made there because they were polished or refined, right? Or put a lacquer on top of them. But a snail will actually produce these shells. Yeah, so many hermit crabs die from shell collecting too. You're right. and it's a big problem here. Divers will take them, they'll see a beautiful shell, and there's a tiny hermit crab, marine hermit crab that lives in there. They pull out of the ocean, they think, oh, there's no hermit crab in there. And then they take it home, they leave it on the porch, and then of course they find out later there's a dead hermit crab in there, right? Another thing that happened is the last couple of years was pumice. So from a underground submarine volcano, you know, pumice would shoot out. The volcano, the lava would mix with the salt water, produce lava, float up to the surface, and then it all washed into the shores of Okinawa. Like just so many pieces where it just covered the complete beaches, turned them from white to gray. But the big problem was everyone thought they had to clean up the beaches to make them look beautiful again. And they were picking up, all this pumice, like literally just thousands of pounds of it. And there was a lot of it, but they didn't think that they were collecting the micro hermit crabs that were inside of there. So many baby hermit crabs died without people knowing because they were so concerned on picking up pumice, right? Because they weren't going through all the pumice rocks. And that's one thing that was a big problem here in the past. Yeah, there's so many divers over here that collect shells, and they come up and they have hermit crabs inside of them, and they're just hidden inside. So the marine hermit crabs are harder to tell because they have a really thin abdomen that's slender and thin, so they go way back into the shell and coil in there. Where the land hermit crabs, you generally can tell, and it's pretty fascinating when you actually find one that perfectly fits. Because hermit crab are actually marine snails, especially the turbans. You've seen before, it's called an operculum, right? A trap door, and it's a piece of the shell that's attached to the snail, and when it gets attacked, it'll actually close up. So there's a trap door, that there's no way a predator can get in there. Well, what'll happen is if you get that perfect fitting hermit crab, when it closes up, it will resemble the operculum of an actual snail, which is fascinating. And but so rarely, like I don't know what it is, but I'm fascinated when I find a hermit crab that lives in the perfect shell, that when it closes up, it creates that perfect door for nothing to get to it. It's pretty fascinating, but it's pretty rare over here to see something like that. Yeah, the perfect fit. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. This was another unique find. I've only found one, and I named him Elbow, but this was really unique because it has both sides are opened, right? And a big land hermit crab was living in this. And it almost, a lot of times when I first started this project in 2012, 2014, a lot of times people would think that I was staging a lot of this, and they're like, "That's fake. How can you do that?" And I'm like, "No, it's not, man. It's real. I find these all the time." And then eventually I would bring them out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're right. This is real." Right? Scoops. I've been finding a lot living in these scoops as well. So pretty strange. Yeah. But one of the coolest ones, the strangest finds, was this lug nut cover, sorry. And this is lightweight, but of course they can't fit their whole body into that, only the abdomen. But I ended up naming the hermit crab lug nut, and he eventually switched into a tapestry turban. But this was pretty cool because it's like you would never think that a hermit crab would actually go into something like this. And I was out, at one of the islands, and I was just collecting wood for the camping fire, and walking down the trail, and lug nuts just walking down. But this was one of the hermit crabs that had a personality. Like a lot of the hermit crabs that I see in the wild, I see everyone on the pages, they pick up their hermit crabs and they let them crawl, and like they don't pinch. But the ones here, if you pick up a wild hermit crab, it's going to latch onto you and it's not going to let go. Okay. So I don't pick them up, right? I've done that before, and I learned the hard way. And but this guy had a lot of personality, and he would just walk by and almost look up at me, and like he was curious, where other ones would just take off running, go hide, flee into the scene. But Lugnut actually had a personality. I'm sure some of your hermit crabs are the same, where they just have a personality. They're a little bit different, or they're looking at you like they're curious, right? But what I've learned is if they do pinch you, right, they hold on tight. It's just to put your hand back down in the sand, and eventually they will let go of it. What I found out the hard way is if you put them into the water, for example, because I'm down at the beach, I was like, okay, if I put him underwater, he's going to let go. Nope, they just latch on even tighter. So their grip strength gets even worse or stronger. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, Ollie. At the time when I did meet Lugna, I did not have any shells with me. But now everywhere I go, I do keep shells with me that are donated from other people that wouldn't normally be here in Okinawa. So a lot of times people, they'll say, even with if you've seen the dodo video, there's always people that are a little negative, right? And they're like, well, why does he have all those shells, right? And of course, that was, we were creating a story as well. So I did have extra shells. They're like, why were they in a plastic bag? Well, because that's what people send them. They send me plastic bags as well, and I'm going to repurpose them, and that's the reason. But also, like, why do you have all those shells? Where did you get them from? So there's so many people that say like a lot of negativity, but a lot of times I let it go because it doesn't bother me because I know what I'm doing is right. And yeah, they're party poopers, but that was another great experience too, as well as being on the dodo, and that brought up a lot of attention to the project and a lot of support as well, worldwide support. So hopefully we can do another one eventually, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. A lot of negative people. They'll always find something bad with it. But another question I get is with all the plastic that I do have, a lot of people, I've actually had people ask where they'll buy it from me, the plastic, or artists will ask me to donate it to them to make projects, awareness projects. But right now I'm going to keep the plastic, and eventually I don't know what I'm gonna do with it yet, but when I do have a photo exhibition with big prints of the hermit crab, then I'll have maybe in a case the plastic that it was in along with the actual photograph and the description as well. I think it would be pretty cool so people could physically see the plastic that it was living in, right? So I'll keep that. Yeah, I've had a couple of photo exhibitions here in Okinawa. It's been years, but one was called Nature Therapy, and it was up at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, and I had endangered species underwater, and then I also had crabs with beach trash homes. So people were fascinated with it. And after I had the month-long photo exhibition, then I was fortunate where they asked me that next year, to give a TED talk at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. And I was the only foreigner, like the only person that didn't work there to actually give a TED talk, because it was the president, it was professors, and it was a big deal. There were six speakers, and I was the sixth one, so that was pretty impressive. And I was fortunate that they asked me to do it, and I was sort of hesitant at first, but then eventually I was like, you know what, I wanted to do this, just go for it. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do, but it was also the most rewarding thing that I ever did, and it's pretty exciting. Pretty, yeah. I mean, it's something you definitely got to prep for, but it was good. Yeah, but I have a lot of my images. If you like other photography, nature photography of all different types of animals, I have a lot on my website, OkinawanNaturePhotography.com. And then on my Flickr account, I also have over 5,000 images of random stuff, nature, all kinds of different stuff. But also, I'm documenting all the shells that I carve, all the plastic that I collect, a little bit of everything as well. Um, iPhone photography as well. So all that stuff is on there from 2010. I think I set it up. So yeah, there's over 5,000 images if you want to see that. I have a lot of that on there. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, and so if it's like I said, I also have a Patreon account. It's called Make the Switch for Nature. So if you want to support the project, and it really helps fund a lot of the conservation projects that I do with the kids and awareness and so on. Um, yeah, so thank you, Stacy, for pinning that, and also follow my Instagram account, Make the Switch for Nature, and I usually will post at least 3 to 5 times a week, and that's on there, and you'll see hermit crabs actually making the switch from plastic into shells, and then you actually see what I do. So I put most of my work on Instagram. And Jamie was asking, do hermit crabs have emotions? Or are they smart? Oh yeah, they're extremely smart, extremely social, but they are bullies. You know, the it's a hierarchy, and the biggest one is usually the toughest. He eats first, or she, and they get what they want. And eventually, if they want that shell that the other hermit crab's in, they will antagonize it to the point where eventually the weak one will abandon, will flee the scene, and take off. So thank you. Yeah. So Stacy, is that it at 11:30? Is there any other questions? Thank you, Jamie. All right. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you for letting me speak. And I look forward to seeing you online. And yeah, thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night, and we'll see you on Facebook, Flickr, or Instagram. All right, have a good night. Thank you. Bye bye.